The Scottish sheep strategy is a single focus, and it's trying to boost the demand amongst commercial farmers for recorded stock on the sheep side. There's a lot of pedigree breeders are putting a lot of time, effort and money into generating the EBVs, and rather than continuing to subsidise that, we're trying to start at the other end, which is to build the demand from the commercial side so that it starts to take up a life of its own, if you like. This takes a range of different activities. Rod is at the centre of it. Rod Mackenzie, who some of you may know, from visiting individual breeders who want to start recording, I'm quite sure where to go, so a bit of training and introductory stuff, through to the focus farms we're talking about, which are really, it's easy for the scientists to say EBVs work, but often the reality on the ground has been a bit disappointing. What we're trying to do is to test out and to demonstrate on commercial hill farms whether EBVs work. So if you choose tups with high EBVs and tups with low EBVs and compare them side by side in the same conditions, is the farm better off? And I think I'll give you the shorthand answer, and the answer is yes. So these things work, but we need to generate the evidence so that people are hopefully convinced by it. The fifth quarter project, focusing purely at the abattoir side, is an advisory network for all the abattoirs in Scotland. The TSE regulations over the last decade really stopped the abattoirs making any constructive use out of this material. Most of it was going in the skip, and they were paying £90 a tonne to dispose of it as Cat 1 material. Huge drain on the entire supply chain, because it meant they couldn't pay you as much for the stock, and it meant that no one was gaining because it's just going in the bin. The regulations have started to relax, and we've got a mixture of market opportunities coming up, and indeed just some of them have learnt more about bizarre things that pieces of animal are used for than I ever really wanted to know. But the key bit about it is the market for lean meat is so competitive that the margins are very slim on it. This is the area that potentially is the profit maker for the entire supply chain. This is the stuff, it's the hides, it's the skins, it's the intestines, it's the fat. It's all these different, the more imaginative uses you can do for that, because you get a double hit out of it. Every kilo which gets sold for, even if it's 50p a kilo, at least you're not needing to pay £80 a tonne to get it incinerated, so you get that double swing. So this is really beginning to work with a great enthusiasm from all the different plants. I don't think there's any of them that haven't learned something or found a new opportunity, whether it's just improving their efficiency within their own plant or new markets that come out. So we're really pleased about this one. The consumer expectation side, the assurance scheme is probably the biggest area of activity here, which have been, if you like, tried and tested for the last 25 years. Our key philosophy is to try and run them as cost effectively as we can, while still responding to what the marketing guys are telling us are the demands from the buyers and the customers out there. Some of the other activities within this that you may be less aware of, we have a system for inspecting all the meat plants all around the country. So wherever Scotch is getting packed, and often the final retail packing is done outside of Scotland, we have a system of oversight there of the plants there to make sure that it's not getting Scotch labels put on it when it's Irish beef going into the pack. We do random spot checks. If we get a complaint about anybody, and it doesn't matter who they are, we'll follow it up, and that goes for farmers, meat plants, Asda, Tesco's, a butcher, a restaurant, doesn't matter. If we get a complaint about it, we'll go and try and get to the bottom of the facts, and if there's a problem, we'll take whatever action is needed to solve it. It's in nobody's interest to create all the demand and the value at the marketing end, and then to get leakage because there's twice as much product appearing on the shelf because it's not, half of it's not real. So that's the importance of labelling and traceability and integrity to it. Quite excited about the last couple of projects here, because this is a kind of fancy technology, but it potentially offers us the opportunity to know where meat has come from where there's no paper at all. And so when you think about restaurants, there's no paper trail to follow. It's a piece of meat sitting on a plate. The ability to be able to take a sample of that meat and test it back and go, that is not what it said it was in the menu, would be hugely powerful. So this is going through various levels of testing just now, and it's looking quite promising, despite our original scepticism about it. So I think this will be one to watch over the next couple of years. Do we have any pig producers in the audience? Right. I'll move swiftly on then. But a lot of our activity is on the pig side, quite a lot of grant funded, and a lot of concentration on health and welfare. there. One thing I would mention is particularly excited about the endorsement over the summer by the Scottish SPCA of the assurance standard. I think what was particularly good about this is we haven't had to do anything different. What they endorsed was the standards that SPI developed 20 years ago. They haven't asked us to do anything different. It's just they're comfortable enough with what the Scottish farm assurance schemes deliver that they're happy to put their name to it, which I think is a fantastic result. Moving on to a different area, this is Carol's team. Protecting the industry's reputation. Everyone likes to take a pop at the meat industry. It would be safe to say we're probably not the most popular industry in all sectors of society. And we see the main role for this team is in defending that and positioning the industry as a vital part of a balanced diet, and indeed a significant employer in rural Scotland. The activities of the team are roughly 1/3 in health and education in schools, 1/3 on PR and communications, and 1/3 on events. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. You can pick your topic if it's environment or cancer or animal welfare. There's always someone who likes to make capital out of the misfortunes of the industry. The interesting thing about some of this is if you combat this with valid scientific evidence and put it across in a rational way, most of the time you'll win over the public. The impact of a lot of this in the papers is quite alarming to see. The impact on sales and on demand is increasingly becoming less and less and less. As they're reaching saturation point with the idea you can't go out of your house these days without something's going to affect you. But we can't let our guard down, we can't be complacent about it, and it's essential that we identify these things early on and take sensible action and put across factual information to rebut it. At the health and education side, we have a full-time dietitian on the staff, and she spends pretty much all of her time working with the schools. This is a side that it plays a number of different roles here, probably the key ones. The level of understanding of food in general amongst the youth of Scotland is not as good as it used to be, if I say diplomatically. And there's a huge role here in just explaining to people how to use the product. If they don't know how to cook meat, they're not going to buy it. They're going to buy the ready-made meal that somebody else made using Thai chicken or Brazilian mince. So if we're going to keep people buying the premium product in 10 years' time, they need to understand how to use the product. And the other part of it is that the diet. If you look at the levels of anemia, for example, in the female population, they are getting to alarming levels because people aren't getting enough iron in the diet because the levels of red meat are not high enough. And so there's a number of very strong reasons why this activity goes down very well in the schools. This is the example on the map here, something to give the parents some comfort here, obviously, where we can join everything up. It's fantastic. So the marketing guys work with the procurement authorities. This is the kind of thing that only the Scottish industry can do. Your local school, identify the farms where the meat that's in the canteen came from. Now, the Irish can't do that. Well, they can do that, but they're not going to want to hear it because it's all from Cork or Brazil, or So it's an incredibly powerful tool there for hitting the buyers in the public sector and trying to convince them that rock bottom pricing is not always the way to go, and sometimes it's worth paying a little bit more in order to get the local product, because as far as the parents are concerned, they'd rather the kids were eating this, and they know where it's come from, and it's got all the safeguarding, it's got the assurance behind it, than just some random cheap protein. Going on to the event side, the main focus of the events is the consumer and the wider population. We would tend not to spend too much time at local agricultural shows, purely because there's so many of them that, to be fair to everyone, would spend all our time doing that and not have the time to focus at the, if you like, the outside society, which is really where we see our role. So things like the Highland Show ticks off 3 different audiences at once. It's very popular with schools, so we host an awful lot of school groups come through in conjunction with a RET. Obviously the farming community and the industry are there, so it's a great chance for us to speak to everybody and find out what the mood is. And then, but the main thing is it's turned into a huge consumer show. It's the showcase of the Scottish industry, as you all know. So that's a big one for us. But other events, the kind of significant technical events in the industry, you'd also see us at.